This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by
Freekeene.com.
You know, we are here, as I mentioned, in New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, a movement of a bunch of liberty-minded folks getting together and getting active in various different ways. And it's interesting kind of comparing what's happened thus far in this movement with what you're saying. One of the critiques up here of the movement, the civil disobedience side of it and the non-cooperation side of it, has been that it hasn't been organized enough. And I think that's one of the strengths of it to some extent, because having a decentralized movement is important to me, because then there's nobody who's in charge. There's nobody who they can kind of pick off at the top and decimate a movement. It's all just being done, at the whim of those who are interested in doing whatever it is they want to do. They may plan something on their own, but there's no central committee or whatever that's handing down edicts. Do you feel like that's a strength?
Yeah, I do think it's a strength. The key is that it's a really difficult balance to have a decentralized movement that also has unity and coherence. And so that's sort of the key, is that, a campaign isn't going to work just because it has a ton of nonviolent protesters. There has to actually be strategy involved, and it has to be organized in a way, not organized in a hierarchy, but coherent, and so that one kind of tactic follows another, and that there's an overarching strategic aim. And that sort of thing can be done in a leaderless resistance sort of way, but it still has to be done. Have you ever done it?
Have you ever done civil disobedience or non-cooperation in your personal life?
I'm more of an astronaut than I'm more of an astronomer than an astronaut. I'll put it that way. I've watched a lot of it. I've been present to watch a lot of it. But
can you give me an example of one that you were present for?
I was in the UK, and I was doing some research on protest movements there, and so I was looking at and watching some immigrant groups protesting the parliament about what they saw as infringements on their rights and that sort of thing, so I'm very curious about it. I'm very fascinated by animal rights movements and things like that, so I'll follow some of their activities. But no, I'm not myself very much of an activist. I'm more just kind of interested in watching.
How successful are these things in democracies? Most of the examples, there's dramatic examples that exist in dictatorships. People die and that kind of thing. How successful are these in democracies? Are they more, less, or equally successful?
I think one of the ironies is they tend to be less successful, the nonviolent ones. And the reason I think is because there's almost like more apathy in democracies. People just think that because they can vote, they'll express themselves that way, and so it doesn't come to them as easily to use other tactics of nonviolent protest. I think that they happen in democracies, but they peter out much more quickly. And maybe, in authoritarian regimes, it's so intolerable to live under that level of oppression that people have less of a tough time.
That's what we've seen, is that people have to, in many cases, be woken up by some sort of strike of violence by the people calling themselves the state close to home.
Columbia Police search warrant! Columbia Police search warrant!
Before they'll really start to speak out, even, let alone do something. And one of the things that I've always encouraged on this show is, if you are seeing something that you think is awful, then the more that you can say no, the better. As far as tyrants and little tyrants, sometimes cities have their little tyrants too, or a judge, for instance. We just had a judge put a guy in jail for over 150 days for handing out some information at court, and it's just crazy stuff. The more people say no, the better off we'll all be. But they have to be willing to take that step, and I think you're absolutely right. People in a lot of these westernized democracies are fat and they're happy, and they're lazy and apathetic as a result of that. And it's unfortunate that they have to have violence strike close in order to take action. I wish we're out of time for today, but Erica, thanks for coming on tonight. If people want to get your book, they can go to cup.columbia.edu and use the discount code WHYCH to save 30%.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the show tonight, Erica. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
What are you arresting this man for?
You've seen the dramatic Liberty arrests in Keene, New Hampshire. Now see 111 reasons why you should move there and reinforce these gutsy activists. Keene's advantages are compelling, and the list of reasons to move has just been updated. For details, visit freekeene.com.